Welcome to Beyond the Valley, a CNBC tech podcast with Arjun Kharpal and Tom Chitty.
Beyond the Valley.
Crypto markets have been volatile since Donald Trump was elected president in the United States in 2024. He campaigned on a pro-crypto ticket, promising to make the US the crypto capital of the planet. With his presidency now underway, is he living up to the hype?
Beyond the Valley.
And I have two of the smartest minds in crypto with me today, Binance CEO Richard Teng and Hashkey Capital CEO Chao Deng. Thank you both for joining me today on this special recording of Beyond the Valley from Converge Live in Singapore.
Thanks for having me.
So let's kick off with the macro situation here. Bitcoin off its all-time highs that we hit around the election of Donald Trump. How much is this about disappointment over Trump's policies so far, and how much of this is a macro situation? Chao, do you want to start?
Sure. I think before or around the time when Donald Trump was elected, the market, including both the institutions and the retailers, they all had very high expectations. But we all know that for a regulator or for a government policy, from an idea, from an expression of an instance to action plans, it takes time. And given the volatile nature of the market, it's in some extent very sentiment driven. When the regulation is not as clear as expected, or when it's not a strong support or actionable action list, the market will be a little bit disappointed in a way.
Richard?
So if you look at the long-term drivers, and if you ask anybody in the crypto industry, right, people will prefer the current administration compared to the last one, right? Last administration, you have Operation Choke Point 2.0 in progress. And then, you have regulation via enforcement, which is extremely tough for the industry to grow. And President Trump came in very pro-crypto, came in and introduced a strategic reserve for US and crypto. I think that's a very landmark issue on that front. And we're going to come, and he has appointed many smart administrators to the respective agencies. And he has the Senate and the House behind him with very pro-crypto legislators. So we are very bullish on that front. So long-term drivers are strong. But crypto market, as with any asset class, is not immune to macroeconomic situations, right? So what we believe we're seeing is a tactical retreat rather than a structural decline, right? If you remember 2022, Bitcoin, after several rounds of Fed rate hikes then, also went below 20,000, but it bounced back up. So again, this is one of those situations.
With the Bitcoin reserve, Richard, was it what you expected? Because it was obviously just the seized Bitcoin rather than new purchases, which many in the market had hoped for.
Well, I think it's a good first step. I think the positivity coming out from that is much stronger, right? The messaging is, look, the largest government, the largest economy, the biggest capital market in the world is now holding Bitcoin as part of a reserve. It will cause many other governments to think through the issue, to sit up to say, hey, should we start doing allocation into crypto and Bitcoin, right? So many sovereign wealth funds are already starting to consider those issues. We were at Davos together, and Larry Finn spoke at that and said, in his conversation with all the big sovereign wealth funds, it's not a question of whether to allocate. It's whether allocating 2% or 5%, right? So we are having a lot of those important conversations now, and we are seeing, the long-term drivers are very, very strong.
And Chao, from your point of view, do you agree with what Richard's saying? It could be a catalyst for other governments to look at this as well?
Yeah, that's for sure. From what we observe from other jurisdictions in Asia, in Europe, and even more in the emerging markets, the regulators are looking up to the US regulator. And I think, in a way, there is a regulatory arbitrage amongst multiple jurisdictions.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into the regulatory question. But there is a big, I guess, question mark over whether the US is expected to buy more Bitcoin. And I think David Sachs, the AI and crypto czar in the US, was saying that actually we're looking at a budget-neutral ways to buy more Bitcoin. Do you expect the US to go on a Bitcoin buying spree? Is there a way to do that in a budget-neutral way?
I'm not an expert of the US legislative system, but from what we read, And from what I strongly agree with Richard's share that the long-term driver, the momentum is building. And the institutions, the retail adoption is immense. It's very obvious.
Yeah. And sorry, Richard, you go ahead.
My view is just by holding on to the seized Bitcoin for now, the US is going to be much better off in the long term. If you look at every government that sold their assets, their Bitcoin over time, Germany, the US in the past, if you look at the value of those assets now, it's so much higher.
Yeah.
Their budget deficit problem could go away.
Yeah.
And Richard, when you look at what the US is doing in terms of crypto, the thinking about stablecoin regulation, about various other pieces of regulation, there is a view that if the US creates good rules of the road in crypto, it could be a blueprint for the rest of the world. So how significant is it that the US gets this right?
Absolutely important. So we have moved from a period where there's big regulatory uncertainty and in many sense, some regulatory hostility towards the industry to one where the largest economy of the world said we want to embrace crypto, we are going to be pro-crypto. President Trump has appointed AI and crypto czar, highlighting the importance of these two fundamental industries, in these two fundamental technologies, driving all economic subsectors going forward. So it is very important. If US come out with very pro-crypto legislation, which I believe they will, it forces the rest of the world to look at that, to say, what am I doing to bring the best talent to my economy? How do I draw new foreign direct investments into the country? And how do I create new economic value? Because US is really doing it, you can't be afforded to be left behind.
Yeah. And Chao, you're operating in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong's been a market that has been quite positive towards the crypto industry and try to figure out the best way to regulate exchanges and trading and all these other areas as well. Do you think what happens in the US will have a bearing on what happens in Hong Kong going forward too?
Sure, it's very obvious. Hong Kong's government has expressed their strong support of Web3 industry starting from as early as 2019, and there were follow-up policies carried out in Hong Kong at different levels. I think the U.S. recent move will be a strong booster to Hong Kong's stance and stronger support to the industry. We run regulated exchange in Hong Kong, custodian asset management in Hong Kong. From our conversations with the regulators, I think there will be more stronger support to the industry in Hong Kong from the regulators.
You mentioned regulatory arbitrage. Just unpack what you mean by that, because I think what you're talking about is the fact that the regulation is fragmented globally, right? In so many different jurisdictions.
Regulatory arbitrage might not be the accurate term, but I think to put it more neutrally is that regulators are now changing their instance to be more accepting of this new industry. And they're coming up with policies, more favorable policies, which is unique to their local strengths in terms of the talent, in terms of the technology and the local market.
Okay. Richard, the fragmented nature.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge challenge going forward.
Especially for a global business like
especially
yours, right?
for global business. So we have moved from a period where there's somewhat regulatory uncertainty, regulatory hostility, to one where the regulators and the policymakers are now taking notice of the crypto industry and say, hey, we need to come up with proper frameworks, smart regulations that embrace the innovative aspects of it, while managing the risk aspect of crypto. But the challenges is there are so many, even within the country. Singapore is quite unique with only one regulatory agency, right? Monetary Authority of Singapore. But if you look at most countries, you have a central bank, you probably have a banking regulator, you have insurance regulator, securities regulators, commodities regulator, which is the issue that US is struggling with. Where should the primary legislation reside? Who should be the primary legislator? So if you can't even decide it at the country level, how do you bring about harmonization at a global level, right? It's going to be challenging. Today, crypto is regulated for those that regulate it. In some places, it's considered securities. Some consider it a commodity. Some, in Singapore, it's a digital payment token. And in some places in the Middle East, come up with dedicated framework, naming it a virtual asset regulations, right? So, and the rules and regulations are totally different. So when we do global deployment, I mean, we are the most licensed exchange globally now, with 21 different countries where we are regulated. It's extremely challenging. You have to operationalize every aspect of your business to do local deployment, to make sure it complies with the local rules.
Do you think Anywhere's got it right?
Anywhere, sorry?
Anywhere's got it right?
I think Middle East is pretty much there, coming out because it understands the different nature and characteristics of crypto, right, which is unlike any other asset class, right? And it's very unique. It built calibrated framework which are bespoke, that understand the characteristics and risks of this area. So I think they are pretty advanced in that whole conversation and in the regulatory framing.
Chao, give us a sense from the perspective of Hong Kong and also mainland China, right? There was a moment in time mainland China was such a key driver of crypto markets way back when, and the regulators really clamped down on trading, on various activities in the crypto space. But Hong Kong decided to create a framework, given it is a big financial hub. Do you think what's happening in Hong Kong right now opens the door up for mainland Chinese regulators to perhaps re-enter the crypto market and allow mainland investors to re-enter the crypto market?
Hong Kong has always been a gateway to the Chinese mainland market, starting from very early times and across multiple sectors, either in the capital market or in new tech sectors. But when it comes to crypto, I think in a long time, the Chinese leaders has always stopped crossing the river by filling the stones. They have to do it step by step. Hong Kong is always like the window. It's the research lab. For Hong Kong to start based on the one country, two system arrangement, it might be a good way for the mainland government to better understand the industry, to better understand the regulatory schemes that's been adopted around the globe. If everything goes well, if the regulator in mainland China see the progress in mass adoption, there is a likelihood, there is the possibility.
Richard, how do you see that equation? Do you think the mainland gets back into it?
I think there is a delicate balance on that front. Every country has their own policy consideration, and so does China, extremely China, such a big country. So on the one hand, China is looking at what's happening elsewhere in the world, including the United States, that's embracing crypto, that's generating new activities and growth on that front. And on the other hand, how do you balance that with things like capital controls in China? So I think it's going to be a very delicate balance. They're probably going to see how the experiment is going to take root in Hong Kong and how Hong Kong can blossom and prosper as a crypto hub while managing some of these other risks before they decide what's the next step.
Let's talk a bit about the growth beyond crypto enthusiasts, beyond retail as well, because you've spoken a lot, and you too, Chao, about institutional adoption and how things like the Bitcoin ETF in the US was very helpful for that, clearer rules of the road as well. But is that institutional adoption coming from more traditional institutions who perhaps a few years ago wouldn't even touch the stuff?
Absolutely. So last year was a landmark year because last year we saw two important shifts that didn't exist before 2024, right? So firstly, with the approval of Bitcoin ETF in the United States, and then subsequently around different parts of the world, I think that gave crypto the credibility that it always deserved. So that's one thing. And then you have a lot of financial institutions that say, hey, this has become mainstream. I'm willing to support this. BlackRocks of the world went from crypto skeptic to crypto believer, and that's huge messaging, right? So we on our platform today, we have about 264 million users globally. We are the largest platform on that front. Last year, we started the year with 170 million users. We ended the year with 240 million. So we grew about 70 million new users throughout the course of last year, and that numbers continue to spike up quite quickly. Institution users spiked up last year. So we sort of doubled the number of institutions onboarding last year because a lot of trading desks that used to trade just commodities, FX, stock and bonds are now adding crypto, and they're onboarded with the deepest and most liquid platform that we offer. And people know that's best execution, best bid ask rate. You have family office starting to allocate. You have trust foundations, corporate treasuries, right? All looking to allocate into this sector. So we saw a lot of movement from last year, and that momentum is continuing into this year.
So even amongst more traditional institutions,
Yes,
you say?
more traditional.
Right.
And I think the more people learn about crypto as a journey, the more they understand all the important utility and use cases, right? Be it stablecoin. I mean, today if you do bank remittance T+2, then you receive your money. Crypto is instantaneous. You receive your funds at a fraction of the cost of what traditional financial institutions charge. Same for payment space, etc. So there are so many important use cases, and we are going to see that coming through. Crypto trades 24/7, and I see news that Nasdaq is trying to emulate that now.
Chao, from your point of view as well, the institutional part of the equation, are you seeing similar things to what Richard's seeing in terms of higher adoption?
Yeah, very similar. We launched the 2 products last year. We the 2 ETFs in Hong Kong, the Bitcoin spot ETF and Ethereum spot ETF. The investor profile is very similar to what Richard just described. Also, we launched our MES regulated fund here. According to the regulator, there are some restrictions. But still, when we look at the investor profile, it's very similar. Sovereign funds, institutions, corporate. And also, you read from news, some nation states are also getting in. Aside from what Richard mentioned about the hurdles of crypto or blockchain adoption, I think currently all the eyes are on the Bitcoin strategic reserve and stockpile. I also would like to mention one important change is the OCC's encouragement. The OCC, the U.S. banking regulator, they encourage and they allow banks to involve with the crypto. This is a very huge step for the crypto and Web3 industry. Before that, the banks were very conservative about serving the crypto space. But after this, they feel more comfortable to deal with crypto-related clients.
And does Bitcoin remain the gold standard for institutions? They don't want to touch any other stuff, or is it Ether as well and other cryptocurrencies?
I think this is the natural learning curve for them. They started with a major and more well-known, well-studied target, and then moved to the smaller one. And it's more like a traditional capital markets. You start with the blue chip, and then the growth, and then earlier stage investments.
Right. Mm-hmm. Richard, because I've got you here and we're talking about institutions, I can't let you go without asking you about the $2 billion of investment you received that was announced overnight from MGX. When we're talking about institutional players getting into this market, that was paid in stable coins. Can you just help us understand a little bit? That's a huge amount of money for a company that doesn't have AI in its name. So what does this investment mean for Binance in terms of where are you putting it? Is it about global expansion plans? It's a lot of money.
Well, so I think for people that know MGX, it's an AI and advanced technology investment powerhouse based in Abu Dhabi. So we're very, very glad to have them on board as an investor as well. There are several firsts coming out from this investment, right? So it's the first institutional investment that we have taken in Binance. It's the largest of its investment in the crypto space into a company. And it's the first investment where the payment is in cryptocurrency, right? The $2 billion is in cryptocurrency. So there are several firsts, but it highlights the mainstreaming that's coming through. So if you think about it, you mentioned about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is about 61% of crypto dominance in the market, right? So 61% of crypto market cap belongs to Bitcoin today. But if you think about mainstreaming, we are currently about 7% of crypto adoption globally. And for every technology in the past where you have seen the growth up to 7%, be it in terms of internet, e-commerce, etc., the next 10% adoption will come very, very quickly, right? So the pace of growth that you see in the last 5 years is going to be much faster than the past 5. And you're going to see convergence of AI, blockchain, finance, all coming together. So I think this is an important area that we'll continue to work with strategic investors, and push the agenda in terms of crypto adoption globally.
So this is about expansion
This is about expansion. This is about working with a very savvy partner in terms of what else can we do as a company.
And just last question on this. Does this finally mean that your headquarters is now going to be in the UAE?
We have not announced our headquarters yet.
Yeah.
When we announce it, you'll be one of the first interviewing your
Richard. That's what I was trying to get out of you. Look, Chao, tell us where you think the biggest innovations are going to be in the coming years in crypto. What are you focused on? Where do you think the big breakthroughs are going to happen?
Well, there's innovation on all fronts. Yeah. To start with, I think payment could be a very convenient choice for the Web3 industry to find adoption. Then tokenization, RWA, and there is also the opportunity for Web3 and AI to be combined to create a new invention, new use cases. Most of the use cases will be related to assets or banking or payment.
And do you think payments are going to be driven by stablecoins mainly?
It could be one of the drivers.
Mm-hmm. And the tokenization of real-world assets, another thing we need a whole podcast episode on. But this is something people have spoken about, where some of these assets, whether it's stocks, bonds, property, whatever, become tokenized. There's a way to put them on the blockchain. It's been something that's been discussed a lot. But where are we on that journey?
Yeah, I think with the more clearer regulatory framework, the participants, including investors, distributors, product launchers, asset managers, they know where are the boundaries, and they know what are the innovations that they can carry out. And with that, with the use of blockchain technology, this will enable assets, illiquid assets, to be more liquid. This will help with distribution. This will help reduce cost. I think as regulation becomes more clearer, there will be more participants, and there will be more use cases.
And Richard, yourself, what are you most excited about? Where do you think the breakthroughs, the innovations are coming from?
I think on many different fronts. I think the utility is coming through very strongly, right? So, for example, we introduced Binance Pay, which is a product that especially people in the frontier market, developing countries, where financial inclusion is very, very low, less than 20%. The only means that they can do payment, cross-border remittance, is via crypto. The only store of wealth is via crypto, right? And they are so much better off compared to holding their fiat currency that's depreciated sharply over the course of the last few years with hyperinflationary environment. So Binance Pay, we did about 27 billion over the course of 2 years since we introduced it. And by our estimates, we saved our users more than 1.75 billion because the fees associated with small amount denomination transfer, less than $500 US, is very steep, right? Anywhere between 6 to 15%. So by our estimate, that saved users substantial money. But all these use cases are important. I think the DeFi world will continue to grow as well. But there are so many use cases and exciting areas that I can't predict the future. I'm not as smart as Chao. But we're just excited. As a platform, we want to support all this new innovation.
But it sounds like sort of, at least in the near term, payments is really an area that you think there's going to be some innovations and breakthroughs.
We will. And we'll see increasing mainstream adoption of crypto as a payment tool. The merchants are asking for it now. They get their money instantaneously compared to 30 days credit, 60 days credit, right? So we are seeing quite a fair bit of movement on that front.
I think that's all we have time for in this episode. Richard, thank you.
Thank you.
Chao, thank you very much. That's
you.
it for another episode of Beyond the Valley. Stay tuned for another episode very soon. Goodbye. And I think we have time, round of applause. I think we have time for a Q&A very quickly from the audience. So if anyone has a question, stick your hand up. We have someone down at the front here. I think that says HODL on the cap.
Yeah, as you can tell from the hat, totally over-allocated to crypto. So I guess this is really a question of we're getting these huge structural moves from the US, which you'd have been laughed out of the room 6 months ago to even suggest it, right? Space keeps going down. What are your thoughts in regards to two things? One is AI and the whole agentic layer, and two on the infamous Trump and Melania token launches.
Who would like to take that first?
Okay.
On the AI and crypto blockchain combination, actually we have invested in a few Web3 and AI themed portfolio companies. I would say it's still very early stage in experimenting. It takes time for it to bear fruits. Secondly, on the meme coin, in every cycle, there is what they call the popular themes. But over the past, Hashkey has been in a space for over 3 cycles. Every cycle, we see there is new experiment. But it takes at least 2 cycles to verify if the idea is good enough. Take DeFi, for example.
Yes.
DeFi actually started from 2012,
Yes.
13, 14. And then it took 2 cycles to bear fruits. And now DeFi, nobody doubts the popularity of DeFi. I think it takes time, at least like 1 more cycle, for us to see if there is real value or real use case for meme coins.
Richard?
I share essentially the same view, right? So if you think about what drives crypto adoption longer term, is essentially utility, right? So there are many narrative and themes throughout the different cycles. You have ICO, IEOs, you have DeFi summer, you have NFTs coming through, if you remember that. This cycle, you have memes, you have AI agents. But really, the longevity of it and whether a particular theme will last really depends on the use case, right? How it's being deployed. Can people really take advantage of it and benefit from that? So I think that's the thing to look out for, right? Over whether it can last more than 1 cycle. On the AI issue, I think, again, it's very early days. It depends on use case, right? People are trying to do this on various things, AI trading, AI agents coming through. But on our own, as an organization, we do deploy AI because just from an organization efficiency standpoint, right? So from the traditional things that any financial institutions does, from know your customer onboarding to know your business to transaction monitoring to market surveillance to operations to customer service. There are so many areas that we can get much better, much more efficient, in a much more cost-effective manner.
I think we have time for one more quick one. Yes, at the front. Will we just get a microphone, if possible? Yeah. Anyone got a microphone? Ah, there we go. Perfect.
Hi, thank you so much for the panel. I just wanted to ask, with the advancements with quantum computing, what kind of, how are you addressing the issues with potential threats to cryptocurrency as well as blockchain assets? Thank you.
Well, so you will see hacks, right? So I think you're referring to security threats. So hacks are not uncommon, especially in the crypto world, which is why we spend a huge amount of energy and resources. Other than investing greatly in compliance, security is a very big area that we invested a lot of our attention and money to, right? So I mean, if you refer to the Bybit hack that happened, it's really a phishing expedition on the user interface front, right? It's not new, it's not unique. If you look at some of the hacks that happened last year, DMM Japan, WazirX in India, BTC Turks, all these security areas continue to surface, which is why in my conversation with regulators, I always highlight to them, as an ex-regulator, you look at things like AML, right? Transaction monitoring. But there are many areas that are unique to crypto where the risk that you may not comprehend enough and you're not spending enough time, attention, looking at those areas. Like security, right? Customer assets needs to be safeguarded. You need to spend a lot of energy and resources and money on that front, which many players are not spending time on, right? For us, we have, from long time back, we have set aside a 1 billion fund, what we call a SAFU fund, Safe Asset for Users Fund. So in the event of security issue, that is ready to compensate users. But we have invested in multi-layer security protocol within the company, right? So it's not only prevention, it's detection, it's real-time, it's encryption. So it's very, very robust by now. Our concern is the same is not the case for many other players in the industry, right? So I think that's one area that regulators are not spending enough time on, which they should be spending time.
Right. Chao, we got like 20 seconds. Just a quick one from you as well on this.
Sure. I think on two fronts. The first, the hacking issue is more like a attack and defense situation. While the attackers are getting more savvy, the defenders are also getting strengthened. On the second front, quantum computing. I think it's still too early to worry about this. The quantum computing is still in the lab stage. The blockchain is updating, it's improving on daily basis. I think rest assured, we don't have to worry about this in at least the coming 5 years. If you guys want to know more, Hashkey has a very strong tech research team. We have wrote a lot of articles on this. You are welcome to visit our website for more tech stuff.
Chao, Richard, thanks so much for your insights. Thank you for coming, and thanks for your question. Round of applause for these wonderful guests.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beyond the Valley.